brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something. I hope you learn something from the stormy seas, from the brightest days, from the darkest nights, from the sunny days.
Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to the daily All Hat No Cattle News Rodeo. I'm your host, Hat. Welcome, YouTube, DLive, and Trovo, of course. And a special hello to the newest friend of the channel. I'm going to pronounce it wrong, I'm sure. Miko 777. It could be Myko for all I know. But I first met this person during the morning gaming streams, and they are kind enough to show up for the afternoon stream and just see how awful I can be twice in one day. So thank you so much for being here. I hope we make it worth your while. And of course, JF, good friend of the channel as always. Nice to see you too. All right, folks. Maybe a little shorter day today. Not much of a big news day. In the after block, I do have some good Law and Order stuff, including a Atlanta mayoral candidate who had an interesting event with his car and some kids just the other day. Quite a funny story. But in the morning, I should say in the early block here, Hunter Biden and his dad are back in the news, and we have some interesting discussions from the House Democrats as to what to do about the horrible and terrible and all-around evil person known as Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. They have some plans for her, and I'm sure they'll be completely justifiable and proportional. But enough of that. Let's get into it. First, our first Babylon Bee bookend. This is the one on the left from their U.S. section. Snopes introduces new rating, false for now. And here we have a flag from the venerable, I should say, Snopes. site I used to use quite religiously, and now, well, whatever. Anyway, it says here from Snopes, false for now. This rating indicates that the primary elements of a claim are probably false because a dangerous far-right conspiracy theorist said them. They may be proven true at a later time when the media decides it serves their agenda. Learn more about our rating system here, and you can click on the link. Dateline US, world-renowned fact-checking website Snopes has unveiled a brand new fact-check rating called False for Now. This will allow them to provide a rating for claims that are just conspiracy theories uttered by deranged far-right people until they later turn out to be true. Quoting Snopes founder David Mickelson, at Snopes, it's important for us to keep up with the undulating, ever-changing ocean of truth claims as they fluctuate across different official narratives we approve of. He continued, did COVID escape from a Wuhan lab? Well, it depends. Did a Republican say it? Does it serve the official narrative of trusted sources like CNN? We have to keep all these important questions in mind as we continue to live our truth, which is what Snopes is all about. Close quote. To save time, Snopes will just attach this rating to everything said by someone on the right until a mainstream, unbiased source like the New York Times approves it to be upgraded to mixture. Snopes also announced they will be attaching a rating of not funny to all Babylon Bee articles. The Babylon Bee, everyone, nailing it as always. So, moving right along to my personal conceit, the market, which just closed, and it was a very lackluster day across the board. The Dow Jones barely eking out 0.4% in gains today. The S&P 500 hardly breaking 0.1% upwards. The NASDAQ finishing actually in the red by a whole 0.01%. But still finishing well below their highs. And in case you're wondering, well, how well are they really doing? I mean, honestly, just look at the 1 month chart here. This is from the last 4 weeks, and you can see this is the Dow Jones. It at one point was over 35,000, and now it is not even 34,500. The S&P 500 also saw a major drop all the way off the face of the earth. And the NASDAQ, same, at one point well over the 14,000 mark, and now barely creating over 13,700. So the major indices have all seen a sharp decline. They have not shown any signs of a major bounce back. And remember, folks, today, the initial release of the new budget proposal from the White House was leaked to the press. A $6 trillion budget. And the market barely moved. So not good news. Not good news. Gold is slowly working its way back up to the $1,900 an ounce mark. Crude oil steadily heading upwards. Now just a little under $67 per barrel of West Texas Intermediate sweet crude. And Bitcoin is still in the doldrums, currently just under 39,000 per coin. All right, so this just came across while I was putting the show together at the very last minute. Facebook, they read the Babylon Bee article. Seems that, things that we've been saying all along may be correct, according to Facebook now. Now, I will admit, my take on the virus all along has been that it came from the lab, that it was an unintentional leak, and that it was a natural virus. Because at the time, I did not know there was such a thing as no-see-ums genetic sequencing. I thought that if you did any kind of cut and pasting on a sequence of a microbe, it showed up. Well, that I found out later, that's not the case at all. There are a number of different techniques you can use to enhance or change various characteristics of microbes without leaving any kind of a trace behind. So I was wrong. Many of you were right on top of it the entire time, and I, again, bow to your prescience and your knowledge. But it seems that Facebook, for quite some time, was removing quote-unquote false claims about COVID-19 that had been debunked by public health experts, which included claims that, quote, COVID-19 is man-made or manufactured. as well as claims that vaccines were not effective in preventing the disease they are meant to protect against, that the disease itself is safer than the vaccine, and that vaccines are toxic, dangerous, or cause autism. Well, now Facebook is saying that we're not going to remove a post if it claims that COVID is man-made or manufactured. Again, Facebook is reading the Babylon Bee articles. That's all there is to it. And good afternoon, Twin Crier. So nice to see you, as always. So nice to see you. So as I said, Hunter's back in the news with his dad, 46 asterisk, our current Hong Kong president. By the way, in case you missed it from last week, Wisconsin is doing a full audit of the 2020 November election. Just saying. Just saying. Also, so is Fulton County, Georgia. That happened last week as well. That went through. Now, I do not know, however, the particulars as to how those audits are going to be performed. Because you remember, specifically in the last Georgia audit, they only compared the ballot signatures to the signatures that were the most recent on file, which were the ones that were used to apply for the ballots, not the ones that were used to apply to register to vote. I don't know what the Fulton County thing is going to be. Now, of course, as we all know, there was not enough fraud in the election to change the results. We know that for a fact because YouTube makes me say that. So it has to be true. I just wanted to get that out of the way. Now, one of the things we also know about the 2020 election is that it was completely thrown by the media. There is no doubt about that. We have all seen the studies. We've all seen the polls from people who voted for 46 asterisk. Not who are thinking about voting, not who are registered Democrats, people who actually pulled the lever or punched the button for Biden November 3rd, 2020. And then they were apprised of the whole Hunter Biden story, the laptop story that Facebook and YouTube and Twitter completely blew off the face of the earth, would not allow you to talk about. And when those voters were apprised of that situation and of the details, over 7% of them said they either wouldn't have voted for Biden or would have changed their vote. Over 7%. Which is well and above over the margin of victory. And now the New York Post is continuing to do better and better reporting on the laptop. We've got this latest here. This is an exclusive for New York Post from earlier today by Miranda Devine. I'll read you the headline. Hunter Biden brought Vice President Joe to dinner with shady business partners. Now, we've seen the previous email from one of these attendees, a guy named Vadim Pozharsky. And Vadim is an executive at Burisma, or at least was. And again, we've seen this particular email before. And it reads as follows. Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to D.C. and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spent some time together. That was in April 17th, 2015. And he further wrote, it's real tea and honor and pleasure. Of course, meaning reality, really, pardon me. Although it is nice to see someone use the word realty as opposed to saying realtor. It's realtor, it's realty. But anyway, so we know that email's been out there. Well, now we have records of Hunter putting together a big meeting with a lot of his international cronies and his dad. It says here, Joe Biden met with Ukrainian, Russian, and Kazakhstani business associates of his sons at a dinner in Washington, D.C. while he was vice president. Records on Hunter Biden's abandoned laptop show. And remember, at the time, Hunter was receiving $83,333 a month from Burisma. So was his partner, Devin Archer, for being on the board. Zero experience, Hunter. No experience in any type of energy field whatsoever. He had been on the board of several corporations, although his only CV at the time was that he was a lawyer. He had no other real world experience, but he was on the board of Amtrak and other major boards. And you can make a living by just being on a board. You can do that. You get on enough of them, you can make a living. Of course, he was making far and away more being on the board at Burisma than anywhere else. Any other board member of a Fortune 500 would give their left arm to make the kind of money Hunter was making per month at Burisma. Their left arm. Continuing with the article, the guest list prepared for this dinner by Hunter 3 weeks before. It was at the Cafe Milano, by the way, in D.C. The dinner included Russian billionaire Yelena Baturina and her husband, corrupt former Moscow mayor Yuri Lushkov. Yuri's now dead. Baturina wired, in case you don't remember, $3.5 million on February 14th, 2014, to Rosemont Seneca Thornton, LLC, a Delaware-based investment firm co-founded by Hunter and Devon Archer, a former advisor to Secretary of State John Kerry. In fact, Devon Archer knew John Kerry because he and Hunter at one time were roommates with John Kerry's stepson, one of the Heinz scions at school. So continuing on, Hunter told guests before the dinner that his father would be attending. In one email, he appears to use his role on the board of World Food Program USA as a cover story for the evening's true purpose of introducing his father to his business associates. Quote, "Okay, the reason for the dinner is ostensibly to discuss food security." And this is Hunter writing to Michael Karloutsos, son of the then head of the Greek Orthodox Church. Hunter also wrote, "Dad will be there, but keep that between us for now. Thanks." The reply, everything is between us, all good. I know you mentioned your dad would probably join the dinner as well." Now we have 46 asterisk on tape, several different interviews saying that he knew nothing about his son's business interests. Absolutely nothing. Here's another email. 3 officials from Kazakhstan were also invited to the Cafe Milano dinner, including Mark Holtzman, then chairman of the former Soviet Republic's largest bank, Kazkommertsbank. Excuse me. And here's the email from Vadim Pozarsky to Hunter. "Dear Hunter, thank you for inviting me to D.C. and giving me an opportunity to meet your father and spend some time together. It's really an honor and pleasure. As we spoke yesterday evening, would be great to meet for a quick coffee. What do you think? I could come to your office somewhere around noon or so before or on my way to the airport. Best, Vadim." And here's the guest list. Yeah, Hunter emailed this to Devon Archer 3 weeks before the dinner. 3 seats for our Kazakhstan friends, 2 seats for Yelena and her husband, the Moscow couple, 2 seats for you and me, 3 seats for World Food USA, Vadim, 3 ambassadors, and a total of 14. And we don't know who all was there. Interesting exchange, though, from Archer to Hunter on March 20th of that year. "Yelena doesn't want to steal Yuri's thunder, so she'll be in town to meet with us, but doesn't want to come to dinner. That was just her thought, so we could insist." He also wrote, "Obviously save a seat for your guy and mine if he's in town." And Hunter replied, "I think your guy being there is more trouble than it's worth, unless you have some other idea." Now, we've seen in these emails that when Hunter uses the phrase, "my guy," or "the big guy," he means Joe Biden. That the context, and we have the testimony of the gentleman who was a direct business partner with Hunter and met with Biden on one specific occasion regarding business, and whose name I've suddenly forgotten. Please forgive me. Oh, gosh, Anthony something, I believe. I'm so embarrassed. I would not wish my memory on anyone. Big Papa Fascist, by the way, in the Trovo chat says Hunter is garbage. I'd say that sums it up quite nicely. Thank you. But Tony Bobulinski. Tony Bobulinski. Bobulinski, sorry. Bu, not boo. Bu. Tony Bobulinski. But we know that phrase, big guy, refers to Joe Biden. And it's also a very easy inference to make that when Devin Archer says my guy, he means Kerry. Whom else could he be referring to in that context, in that aspect, but Kerry? And of course, no one's going to bring this up at the press conference tomorrow. We'll never hear from this again. But I wanted to bring this to your guys' attention, so you'll have this forewarned is forearmed. By the way, Twin Pryor mentioned in the Trovo chat earlier, our conspiracy theories are becoming reality. Yes, fascinating, isn't it, how that happens? And here's yet another of them right here, that it was a conspiracy theory all along that Joe Biden was in on all of his son's shady business deals. Joe vehemently denied it, at every opportunity. And so we know that since this is the most truthful and honest administration and transparent administration in the history of the United States, that we can take that word and shove it into the bin with all the rest of the fake money that's being printed right now. Laura Weekly in the D-Live chat says that she coined the term conspiracy factualist. I like that. I'd forgotten that, Laura. Conspiracy factualist. I'll try to remember that. Everybody run with that if you can. Give Laura all the credit she deserves. Okay, so as I said, printing funny money, right? According to what's been leaked out so far, the guy in the White House wants to spend $6 trillion a year up through 2031. If not beyond. It is his thinking that by completely blowing out government deficits, we will enrich the middle class and make America stronger and safer and more wealthy. By spending money we don't have, by increasing our service on the national debt to double what it is right now within 3 years, by pretending that inflation will always be at or near zero, even though we know it's well over 3% right now, at the best resolution of the current inflation, it's over 3%. By most metrics, it's over 4%. Somehow, he believes that spending more money on this economy, on this country, than we have since World War II is a great idea. Because somehow creating a middle class that is completely dependent upon government largesse will make it stronger. This is how Democrats think, folks. They think that the more money they throw at you, the better off you are, when instead, all it does is provide you less incentive to do better. This is the race to the bottom that Janet Yellen keeps saying is about other governments offering lower corporate tax rates to attract business. She calls that the race to the bottom, which is insane. No government is going to reduce their corporate tax rate to the point where it won't work for them. But governments like ours are more than happy to raise the corporate tax rate in such a way as to pretend it will bring in more money, but in fact, it'll just drive business overseas like it did during the Obama administration. I can't name you the number of pharmaceutical manufacturers who relocated to Ireland under Obama-Biden because Ireland's corporate tax rate was lowered significantly while ours went up. Ireland became a hub of international business almost overnight, thanks to Obama and Biden. And so now they want to create such a heavy debt burden that if interest rates go up any more than just 4%, we'll spend a third of our budget servicing the debt. the only two programs that'll cost us more than the debt would be defense and Social Security. I mean, Medicare and Social Security, not defense. Defense is lower on the budget. Medicare and Social Security would be the only two things we would spend more on than servicing the debt. And by the way, I'm not talking about paying down the debt. No. No, the debt will grow. Servicing the debt just means that you're paying the interest on the bonds that people have bought to finance the spending. It's not lowering the debt. It's like making the minimum payments on your credit card and wondering why the balance never goes down. That's what servicing the debt is, making the minimum payments. Now, there are a number of economists who are pointing out that this is an absolute fallacy. But if you read the article that I've got here, it's an archive from the New York Times, they make it sound like this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. At the very bottom of the article, they get to how it could be problematic to spend money we don't have and to print it day after day after day and throw it into an already overheated economy. But it's the New York Times, so they have to apologize for the stumblebum in chief. So as I said, one of the main problems with blowing out the budget like this is going to be servicing the debt, and that because of inflation. Right now, the Federal Reserve holds billions, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of the national debt. I'm sorry, no, 5 trillion. Yeah, pardon me, numbers in my brain. Right now, the Federal Reserve owns $5 trillion of the $29 plus trillion national debt. That's not the unfunded liability. That's in the hundreds of trillions. But just the normal national debt, the Fed owns 5 trillion of it. That's where a lot of this money that's been printed over the last year is gone, buying government bonds. The Fed is also paying banks to hold on to money instead of lending it, because they're worried that more money beyond what they've already created will create too much money in the circulation and will raise interest rates, which is exactly what it does. When you have more money chasing over less goods, you get inflation. And so we are actually paying banks to not lend money to keep interest down. It's like paying farmers not to plant crops. And I've got this article from the Epoch Times by Peter Schwab. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, Peter. And he quotes a number of economists on both sides of the aisle who say that all of this money being printed cannot end well unless things line up exactly in the right order. And how often does that happen? Remember, economics is a soft science. There are no hard and fast rules to economics beyond the Laffer curve and anything Thomas Sowell's ever written. That's about it. So, get this. Usually when the government borrows money, it's backed by Treasury securities bought with existing dollars by individuals, companies, and governments. This time, however, a major share of the $5.6 trillion in COVID-related government spending was funded through securities bought by the Fed with brand new dollars. The Fed now holds over $5 trillion in U.S. debt, up from some $2.5 trillion in February 2020. So quoting one of the economists who's taking the opposite side of there not being enough money, this is Ryan Young, who's at the Pro-Free Market Competitive Enterprise Institute. I've read from the CEI before. They're good people. I trust the CEI. So here's what Ryan Young has to say. I'm almost worried more about the government trying to hyperstimulate the economy because they want growth to get back to the previous trend line, and the way politicians work is that would mean more spending, more stimulus, more infrastructure, more debt, more deficit. Quoting him again, these are not sustainable strategies, and supposing they do in New Saboom, the trade-off for that is there's going to be a bust later, leaving us no better off than before. So one of the other things the administration is screaming about is infrastructure. We're going to invest in this economy with infrastructure, roads, bridges, tunnels, 5G, broadband for everyone. By the way, my take on broadband for everyone, it's possible, but not everyone's going to be able to afford it. Unless the government so heavily subsidizes an ISP that it's insane, how much infrastructure is it going to cost? Say Time Warner Cable, is it, I don't even know if it's still a thing or not. Let's just say there is. Time Warner Cable, or Comcast. How much money is it going to cost Comcast to lay coax for high-speed internet? Not fiber, but coax for high-speed internet to every farm in, say, Kankakee County, Illinois. Let's say it costs, I'm going to pull a number out of my butt, $1 million per farm. When you add in all the infrastructure to get it from their hub to that farm, $1 million. And I think there's about 800 farms in Kankakee County, maybe 1,000. Let's just call it an even 1,000, $1 billion. Unless the government pays Comcast an S-ton of money to put that cable out there, those farmers are not going to be able to afford that broadband. I've used this analogy before, and I'll use it again. It's like buying a warbird. I used to be really big in the warbird community. And those planes are beautiful, fun to fly, and expensive, unless you get the basic ones, like the old trainers, like a Stearman. It costs hundreds of dollars an hour to fly just the smaller stuff. You get something like a Mustang, which will cost you $1 million+ just to buy. You need high test gasoline, and you have to keep it below a certain compression ratio, or you'll blow out the engine. And the engines are tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're not making them anymore. So my specific story is, I knew a guy back when I lived in Texas at the Addison airport who bought what was known as the SPAD, the A1 Skyraider, which was the last piston-driven attack aircraft that the Navy used. They used them extensively in Korea and Vietnam. Something like 8 50 caliber machine guns in the wings. It could carry a bunch of bombs, rockets, all kinds of stuff. Huge radial engine. Big old propeller, single engine. And you can get them for fairly cheap. There are a lot of them around. And I think he paid about, again, pulling a number out, $100,000 for it. Okay, now you own an airplane. Now you need a hangar to keep it in. There's anywhere from $500 to $1,500 a month. Now you need a mechanic, because these things don't run on unicorn farts and pixie dust. Every hour you fly one of these things, you need at least another hour and a half of maintenance put into it. And this is very specialized maintenance. So you're going to pay through the nose for that. Here's the best part, though. The fuel. Just the fuel. An A1 Skyraider, first hour of flight, it uses almost 100 gallons of fuel. First hour of flight. It's a big airplane, takes a lot of power to get it off the ground, takes a lot of power to climb, and it's also really draggy. It's got a big, huge surface area on it, so it takes a lot of power just to pull it through the air. And you'll $100, 100 gallons for the first hour of flight, and then it drops off from there. At the time, avgas, which is 100 octane, low lead, very specialized stuff. At the time, avgas was around $3.50 a gallon. It's been higher, it's been lower. When I got my private pilot certificate, avgas was around $1.20 a gallon. It cost him so much to fly that aircraft. He owned it for one season and then he sold it. He couldn't afford to fly it. And that's what's going on with this infrastructure. We are throwing money at a problem that isn't as bad as they tell us it is. And by kickstarting all of these projects, government-funded projects, we're going to squeeze out privately run projects. And as we all know, private companies know how to do business, governments don't. So if you take a road project that could have been put together by a private firm, gotten tax dollars and private money in advance to put it together, you'll get one result. Maybe it'll take you a year, and it'll cost $1 million. If you get the government involved, it's going to take 3 years, and it's going to cost $8 billion. $1 million. Guaranteed. So you're taking what would be a productive workforce, and you're making it less productive over a longer period of time. That's what the infrastructure projects would do. One last thing from this article. Quoting again, furthermore, the Fed should let go of its dual mandate of full employment and 2% inflation and simply focus on keeping the money supply roughly in line with the economic growth, with inflation around zero or perhaps gently fluctuating both above and below zero, according to both economists. The argument that people need to feel the constant whip of inflation on their backs to do something productive with their money is misplaced, said one of them. Quoting him, people are always going to look for productive things to do, to try to buy the things they need, invest in the things they need. So in other words, we don't need the government telling us how to spend our money. Ray mentions in the D-Live chat, you can take a 15-minute ride on a B-24 for free. You just have to pay $1,500 for fuel. Exactly correct. Exactly correct. I have ridden in 2 B-17s, by the way. Texas Raider and, I can't remember the name of the other one now. I have an air-to-air photo from Texas Raider that I took out the right waist gun position. That you can just see the bare tip of the right wing and the static wick in the far left frame. Inside the frame is a picture of an AT-6 Texan that was flying formation with us. And unfortunately, that pilot and aircraft are no longer with us. Some years after I took that picture, he took someone up for a ride at an air show in Texas, and the plane spun into the ground and crashed. It made a little hole, a very deep little hole. And they think what happened is the passenger tried shifting in his seat in the rear of the aircraft. And I've flown a T-6 before too. I've flown a couple of them, not solo. I'm not rated in them, but I can fly them. But he was in the back seat, and he tried to shift his position, and he stepped on the rudder in the back seat, and he got his foot caught. Because people watching the aircraft said it was flying along just fine, and then suddenly it snapped over, and it never recovered. So it looked like a rudder-induced wing over, and it was unrecoverable, and they went into the ground. I really missed that guy. Great aircraft. Great aircraft. Okay, moving right along. So as I said, the Democrats have to do something about Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, because she is scaring people. Honestly, she's literally scaring the Democrats, because she says such things as, you guys support terrorists, and the Green New Deal is a bunch of crap. So obviously she's a very dangerous person who needs to be dealt with in very severe ways. I mean, it's one thing to say that Israel is committing genocide, deliberately targeting children, and that an organization whose stated mandate is to kill all the Jews in the world, it's one thing to stick up for them. But it's another thing to challenge AOC to a debate on the Green New Deal. That is obviously dangerous. Now, the Democrats have already stripped Marjorie Taylor Greene of all of her committee assignments for things she said before she ran for office, and has admitted we're wrong. But the Democrats know better than the voters of Georgia what to do with Marjorie Taylor Greene. So they stripped her of all her committee assignments. Meanwhile, AOC and Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Cori Bush, Ayanna Pressley, they're on magazine covers with Nancy Pelosi because they're such good and honorable people. And now they're talking about getting a restraining order to keep Marjorie Taylor Greene away from Ocasio-Cortez. Now, you may not know, but back when AOC was starting to really catch on social media and was saying all those great things that she is known for as being the most stupid person other than Mazie Hirono in Congress, Ben Shapiro challenged her to come on his Sunday show and talk with him. And let's go over your Green New Deal. Let's go over things. And AOC accused Ben Shapiro of catcalling her. And remember, that's one of the gravest sins a man can commit, is to catcall a woman. Of course, as the feminists explain it, catcalling is when you say, hey, you have a nice smile. That's catcalling. But this is AOC's normal reaction to people demanding she be accountable for the things that she says. She screams that you're violating my rights as a human being. And so now they're actually talking about getting a restraining order against Marjorie Taylor Greene to keep her away from AOC. These are the people who are running the country, folks. Make no mistake about it, they're running the country. I hope to God you have a Republican legislature and a Republican governor, or can get one real soon. Because that's the only thing between you and ruin right now. Because these people are out of their damn minds. Speaking of being out of your damn mind, let's not forget the great mayor of Chicago, Lori Lightfoot. The other lesbian woman who ran for mayor. And obviously the one best suited for the job. She's come up with a great idea to reduce the spiraling out of control crime rate in Chicago. You remember last weekend, between Friday evening and 2 a.m. Sunday morning, at least 55 people were shot in Chicago. 11 killed. 11 or 12, actually. And the mayor has come up with all these great proposals, like preventing police from doing foot chases unless they get permission from a supervisor. Which, of course, means whoever it is you're supposed to be chasing gets away. Let's incentivize resisting arrest. Good call, Mayor. She's also been talking about cutting the budget for the CPD. And she's been in a big feud with the Chicago PD union. But she has what could be the greatest idea ever to curb violence and other criminality in Chicago. And that would be to ban the sales of packaged liquor after 10 p.m. and before 7 a.m. every day except Sunday. And if Sunday, you'd have to wait an hour later. You wouldn't be able to buy until 8 a.m. That's her plan. Restrict the sale of liquor. And her reasoning is incredibly solid and sound. She says it'll cut down on loitering. Yeah, that's her plan. Cutting down on loitering by limiting the hours to sell packaged liquor. Now compare that to this. In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott signed a bill making alcohol delivery permanent in the Lone Star State. Quoting Abbott, "To help restaurants be better able to deal with the pandemic, we waived the regulation to allow restaurants to sell alcohol to go. Well, it turned out that Texas liked it so much that the Texas legislature wanted to make that permanent law in the state of Texas. And it has been signed into law. So now, You can buy whatever you want in Texas and have it delivered to you, or you can take it to go. In Wisconsin, if you buy a can of beer and then want to take it outside, they have to open it for you before you walk away from the bar. In fact, even if you're drinking it inside, they open it for you first. So that way you can't take it somewhere and drink it in public, away from the restaurant. That's the thinking. That's the thinking. They open it for you. So if you buy a can of beer and you want to sit outside for a little while, get your cigar going before you open it up, too late. Too late. Laura, I can't read that out loud, but I'm sure I would have. Let me put it that way. I'm sure I would have. Big Papa Fascist says in the Trovo chat, it's not just gas prices. Everything that is a commodity is going up in price. Yes, steel has gone up. Copper's gone up. Lumber has gone up over 100, and I believe lumber's gone up about 120%, 150%, somewhere in there. There are basically no new home starts anywhere in the country right now because you can't get material. And even if you could get the material, you couldn't get the labor. As I said the other day, I hope if you're selling your home, which because it's a seller's market, you've got another place lined up to move into. Because if you don't, you're going to be living in a Motel 6 for 6 weeks. It's almost impossible to find a place in Florida right now, unless you go to a condo. In fact, I don't have it pulled up. Oh yeah, actually I do. I do actually. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me move on. Let me move on. So again, Democrats have all the answers. They know exactly what's going on. You can trust them with your lives. And a perfect example of that is Maine. Because Maine recently dropped all mask regulations except for children in school over the age of 5 and all legislators in session. Legislators, in session. Now, of course, there's no science behind making kids wear masks at all. And if YouTube throws me off for that, fine. But there's even less reason for people who have had full access to the vaccine to have to wear a mask. But the head of the Maine House, Maine, House, has said, we're not taking away the mask regulations. If you come in, you've got to be wearing a mask. So a few Republicans got together and went into the State House the other day, and the State House law enforcement, I don't know exactly who they are, said, you can't come in here without a mask. And the Republicans said, so what are you going to do? And they were told that leadership would decide. So they went in. And the head of the Maine House, a Democrat, has kicked all these Republicans off their committees and put Democrats in their place. That's his proportional reaction to having people push back on an unscientific mask mandate. Not gas mask mandate, mask mandate. Strip them all of their committee assignments. Just boom, replace them. So there's that. So I always like to give you some good news to balance out the bad news. And the good news right now is Florida. Florida and Texas. Great news came out of Texas this week. I'll get to it in the after show. It's in the Law and Order block. But there was a town hall just the other night, I think it was last night actually, on Hannity's show, Sean Hannity's show on Fox, 9 p.m. Eastern. And he had a roundtable of Republican governors. And it was nice to see Governor Noem in this time. She wasn't in the last one, but she was in this one, along with Kim Reynolds, I believe her name is, the governor of Iowa. Real stud, real stud. But One of the things that's been brought up with Florida is the thousands of people a week that are moving there from New York and New Jersey, especially. All up and down the eastern seaboard, to be sure, but mainly New York and New Jersey. They're bringing their kids so they can go to school. They're bringing their businesses so they can thrive in a climate that doesn't overregulate them and shower them with insane taxes. And they're making more money because there's no state income tax in Florida, just like in Texas, no state income tax. Now, one of the things that people say, though, is, especially in Texas, because a lot of California people move to Texas. Like Austin is a very, very, very blue city. And I've got a story about them in the after show. It's not good for Austin. But you got a lot of liberals moving in. And the joke always is, feel free to move to Texas. Just leave your politics back in California. Don't bring to us what ruined your state. And that's been a common refrain with the people moving to Florida. Well, according to Governor DeSantis, they're all registering as Republicans now. By all, I mean colloquially all. Certainly a large percentage of them are registering as Republicans in Florida. A lot of them due to the school policy. Many, many, many people moved to Florida just so they could get their kids in school. Because remember, kids have been going to school in Florida since August of last year. And people said, I got to get my kid in school. This is insane. Boom, they're in Florida. Some people just moved their kids to Florida and then got there later. Found someone for them to stay with so they could get established in a school district, and then they followed afterwards. That's how important it was to them. But these people are switching their registrations from Democrat to Republican. So the worries, at least in Florida, of the voter base being denuded by blue voters is actually just the opposite. It's making Florida stronger as a Republican state. And I think that is the model for this country. We need to have leaders like DeSantis, to a lesser extent Greg Abbott in Texas. Abbott really bungled the COVID thing quite a bit. He could have done a lot better than he did. He's playing catch up right now. He doesn't have the heart of the people behind him. But DeSantis has been a stud. And he's showing leadership, and other states are following suit. You've got Florida's recent bill that was signed into law regarding censorship on social media. Texas is doing the same thing. Other states are looking at it. Trans athletes, things like this. Florida and other red states are leading the way. And people are moving there. You know who else is moving to Florida and Texas? Cops. Cops from big city departments are moving to smaller towns in Texas and Florida and beefing up their police forces with experience and training that only a large budget police force could provide. So these areas are actually getting safer too. So this is, all politics are local, don't get me wrong. But obviously, things like this at the state level could be the difference between life and death when it comes to what this current administration could do to this country. Now, I mentioned AOC earlier, and specifically her Green New Deal. There have been a lot of estimates as to how much any green policy promoted by either AOC or Biden or anyone in between would cost. But the figure has always been in the tens of trillions of dollars. Upwards of 83 trillion by some estimates. And that includes, quote unquote, making sustainable homes. I still don't know what that means. Upgrading everyone's windows, putting heat pumps in everywhere and taking out air conditioning and gas heating, things like that. Winterizing, blah, 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 blah. So basically destroying every structure in the United States and rebuilding it in a green mode. And a number of estimates have shown that that would cost, at the high end, about $600,000 to $800,000 per household over 10 years. Some would say over 15. But that number is pretty immutable, $600,000 to $800,000 per household over 10 to 15 years. And if you ask someone, are you willing to do your part to save the environment? Many, many, many more people will say yes than no. Everybody wants to help the environment. There aren't a whole lot of people who say, no, I want to have a coke fire going in my backyard at all times because I like the heat. You're not going to get a lot of that. Here's the thing, though. Every time you get one of these questions, would you help save the environment? People say yes. Do you believe in common sense gun control? Yes. You get these 85% numbers. But then you ask the specifics. How much would you be willing to give up to get to that goal? Then suddenly reality kicks in. You ask someone who just bought a gun, would you believe in common sense gun control? And they'll say, yeah. And they'll say, so part of that is registering your weapon so that if it's later declared to be illegal, they can take it away from you. Are you for that? People will say no. But that's in every gun control bill that's come around in the last 10 years, registering guns. They hide it, but it's still there. And now we've got an excellent poll. This is from the, excuse me. This is from the Conservative Enterprise Institute, who I quoted a little while ago. And let me set it up for you. This, by the way, was written by Brad Palumbo and the Foundation for Economic Education.org. The Green New Deal would cost taxpayers up to nearly $93 trillion. And so the Competitive Enterprise Institute did a survey, and it was a very simple question. How much of your own money would you be willing to personally spend each month to reduce the impact of climate change? Very simple question. You're all for climate change aversion? Reversal? Put your money where your mouth is. How much are you willing to spend to do that per month? 75% of the people who responded to that poll, 1,200 registered voters, 75% said they were not willing to pay more than $50 a month. If you look at the poll here, I know it's a little hard to see, but the highest mark by far at 35% is 0. I'm all for the environment, but I don't want to have to pay anything to change it. The next highest is 15% at $1 to $10 per month. And then the only two above double digits were 12% at $41 to $50 a month and 14% at $91 to $100 a month. There was actually 1% who said they would spend upwards of $1,000 a month to impact climate change. 1%. And that's not even close to what it would cost over 10 to 15 years. So you have to ask yourself, does this administration have the mandate they pretend they do in order to get this kind of pie-in-the-sky stuff through? I'll give you another example of where this is going. I watched an episode on BillWhittle.com, their Rumble channel. I believe it was yesterday. By the way, I'm very sorry for the shows that I missed, and I'm going to repeat this again when I do the after show. I did not sleep at all between Sunday morning and yesterday morning at all, and I was a complete zombie. You may have seen the video I cut Tuesday letting you know that I couldn't be on. Yesterday, I barely could function. So I couldn't even cut a video to let you know I wouldn't be able to be on. I'm very sorry I missed those shows. With my intractable insomnia, I never know when I'm not going to get any sleep. And I'm very sorry I missed those shows. Very sorry. But anyway, I watched a Bell Whittle piece, and someone on Twitter did the math when it comes to electric vehicles. And it's very simple. They took the number of miles driven per year, which is, I believe, about 7.5 trillion miles a year driven by American cars on American roads. And then if you take that and divide it by the cost per mile of an electric vehicle, which is about 0.3 of a kilowatt hour per mile, and if you add those up, you would have to build, looking at our current power structure, you would have to build 1 gigawatt reactor every 3 weeks for the next 10 years to cover the cost of a fully electric country. I'm 14 years, sorry, by 2035. 1 gigawatt reactor every 3 weeks for the next 14, 15 years just to cover the cost of creating all electric vehicles if they traveled the same amount as they do now. That does not include any other use of the grid whatsoever, just charging those vehicles. Now, a gigawatt station is huge. As I remember correctly, most nuclear facilities around the country are about 600 to 800 megawatts. So a gigawatt plant would be top of the line and probably be a 3-reactor plant. Folks, you ain't going to build one of those in 3 weeks. You're not going to build one of those in 3 years under current regulations. And we all know that the left is dead set against nuclear power, which is the only way out of this carbon trap, as they call it, is nuclear power. But they refuse to go along with that. So the whole electric vehicle thing is dead and gone. I mean, look at California. They want to ban combustion vehicles, internal combustion vehicles, I think by 2030, 2035. They have an electrical grid held together with baling wire and chewing gum. They took a major nuclear reactor offline and tried to replace it with wind and solar and lost power to the grid. It was a net negative. Ray mentions in the chat, we use fossil fuel for more than just gas. Absolutely. Heating a home, cooking, many refrigerators run on natural gas. And you've got propane for heating. Some homes in the winter, out in the sticks, they use propane heat as a backup. And on and on and on. Yeah, no, you're right, Ray. You're right. You're absolutely right. Okay, I'm going to have to cut it short here. I'm sorry, I wanted to do that story, but I am off YouTube. I went a little long. So YouTube, you all, thank you so much for being here. I will, of course, God willing, and my head hits the pillow properly, be back here tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern for the rest of I should say the final show of the week, the Friday show, where we will, of course, conclude on the after show with my pick of the best FreedomToons cartoon of the week. But you have to be here for the after show for that. I don't show that on the YouTube side. And of course, if you care to, every morning I game. I'm playing The Witcher 3 right now. I start at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday. Play for about 3 hours. I'm currently going to do some missions in Skellige, the archipelago. And then we'll move on to one of the DLCs, probably Hearts of Stone. But that may not start until sometime this weekend. And on the weekend, I start gaming at 9 a.m. Eastern. And sometimes I play all day with a break for lunch. That's it. We'll have to see. But YouTube, thank you so much for being here, as always. And I'll see you soon. And Green Badger Outdoors, I just saw your chat. I'm so sorry I missed that. I'm so sorry. I've been so intent on the news, I did not look at the chat. My bad. All right.